This season is brought to you by the Working Garden Project. Did you know that 74% of employees struggle to disconnect from work? The significant percentage say that their job negatively impacts their mental and social well-being. And many employees are considering leaving jobs that don't support their overall health. They need solutions. And based on all the positive benefits that we know that can come from nature, nature can be one of them. The Working Garden Project is a nationwide effort to bring the benefits of nature and communal gardening to workplaces across the country. To learn more about how to bring the Working Garden Project to your company, head to workinggardenproject.com. Whether your company is big or small, the Working Garden Project has solutions to create more happiness, engagement, and productivity in the workplace. Again, that's workinggardenproject.com. Hello, I'm Jessica Mernan, and this is Inside and Outside, a nature and pop culture podcast. Each week, I bring you one piece of nature news, that's the outside part, and then my guest brings something pop culture related, that's the inside part. This is definitely more political news, less fun pop culture news, but stay with me. Yes, we missed 2 weeks, and it's because I had two guests need to reschedule and another guest that asked to push their episode by a couple weeks. So we're back now, and we will be for the coming weeks. Real quick before we start, I'm hosting a flower pressing workshop at Paper Canopy in Charleston, South Carolina on April 19th. I'll put a link to that in the show notes. And it's not too late to sign up for a growing session this season. I mean, it's never too late, but it's not too late to start planning your garden now. And as I always say, my sessions are super beginner. So if you know nothing, that's okay. Most people that I work with have never even bought a pack of seeds before. So do not feel like you need to know everything to get started. You don't have to know anything. I want to help you. I'll include links to that in the show notes at bastardgardens.com. Okay, today's guest is Karen Faith. I'll have to say this episode is a little heavier than ones in the past. One trigger warning is that we do talk about Jeffrey Epstein briefly. I think this was a conversation I personally needed right now, and I'm hoping that you get some things from it too. Karen Faith runs Others Unlimited, an empathy training company. She's also one of the best ethnographers out there and has worked with companies like Google, Amazon, Blue Cross, the NBA, the ACLU, and so many more. I do want to note that Karen has a really interesting background. She grew up with parents who she calls highly dysfunctional religious folks and grew up with a lot of violence and abuse. And she has a pretty traumatic upbringing, which we don't talk about in the episode, but I just thought it would give it context. And she felt it was pretty unlovable at times, but this also made her incredibly more sensitive to the feelings of other, observing the people around her trying to get ahead of what would happen next. And she believes, and I know, that this has made her a really incredible ethnographer, a really great person to talk about empathy, and is just able to create spiritual concepts that have nothing to do with religion. Karen and I talk about mushroom coffins in our nature news. And then we do dive into a political discussion in terms of the struggle that so many of us are facing right now with just not being able to comprehend what's happening in our world. And do we extend empathy? And do we try to understand the perspective of people that are harming and hurting us? And what's the cost of doing that? So, mushroom coffins, death, and the horrors of what's happening in our world right now. I know it's a heavier one, but again, I needed this conversation. Sometimes it's just comforting to hear that other people are as concerned as you. You can find all the show note links at bastardgardens.com. And here's my conversation with Karen. Karen, welcome to the podcast. I think it's funny, one of the last times we text is when I was freaking out that there was a bunch of news articles that Jessica is deemed the new Karen.
Gosh.
And
Oh,
I text you, I'm like, what do I do? And you're like, 2020 was a very hard year for me. Do you feel like being a Karen is easier?
but it's easier now, but I also want to say that I understand how ironic it is to be like, oh, the summer of 2020 was really hard for white girls named Karen. It's like, yeah, the summer of 2020 was very hard for a lot
Yes,
of
yes,
people.
yes.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Black Lives Matter was so huge, and we were all inside the pandemic, and I was like, oh, people don't like my name anymore.
I know you care deeply about those other things, but
I
yeah,
Yes, I do.
the Jessica as the new Karen has seemed to go away. So,
Well,
I'm
it didn't touch
sorry.
me. I didn't hear about it.
Yes. I mean,
Um,
my family was sending me articles about it. It was all over my newsletters, but it seemed to have died down.
Good.
Yeah.
It was really tough, and the thing is, it wasn't just that it wasn't tough for a sentimental reason. I was really having when I would meet someone and say my name is Karen, they would go, ugh. And it's just such a bad first vibe. And
Yes.
I remember thinking what we're hating on about these Karens is primarily the prejudice, right? And it's
Right.
like you've just created that for all people named Karen.
Right.
But yeah, yeah. Karen's still alive and well, but it's not as I don't have that upon first meeting someone anymore.
Yes, and you change what people think about it. Well, on this podcast, we talk about outside things and inside things, and we always start outside. And this is not necessarily super new, but it was new to me. And my outside thing, my nature news that I'm bringing to you is something called the Loop Living Cocoon. It is actually a coffin made entirely from mushrooms. So it says in just 7 days from local mushrooms, it's upcycled from hemp fibers, and it returns to the earth within 45 days. Now, I sent you a link to this. I'm curious what type of lining you would get if you would be open to this. You've got a moss standard lining, a wool lining, and a soft organic cotton lining. My question for you first is, would you be buried in a loop living cocoon made of mushrooms?
The shortest answer is yeah, sure. But it's also that I've my mother was the music minister at our church growing up, and so we were there every time music was needed. And so I actually as a kid went to quite a lot of funerals and I saw coffins and I saw, embalmed people and I was always so confused like why are we doing this? Because I was like because I asked a lot of questions and I remember my mom telling me even about my grandfather, it's like, well, that looks like your grandfather and that's his body, but he's not there. And I'm like, so then why are we doing this?
Right.
And and then learning more about the traditions and stuff. And it has an interest, embalming has an interesting history and burial has an interesting history. But it all seems like a lot of environmentally damaging effort and money for a kind of symbolic thing that isn't terribly helpful.
Right.
So it's like,
Yes.
and my first question about the natural burial is it better than just putting a body in the ground? And I don't know the science on it because I'm like, wouldn't your body just decompose if we just put the body in the
Right.
ground? It's natural. And I
That's a
know,
great question. And I think it's right. It's that ceremonial aspect or tradition aspect. Like we don't just put bodies in the ground. And maybe you're right, there's environmental, but if you're putting yourself in a mushroom coffin, you are essentially just putting your body in the ground.
but something I noticed about because I looked at that link is that it's a beautiful coffin.
Yes, it's beautiful.
It's made for the ceremony and it's aesthetically really lovely. And it just points to that thing. This came up in conversation recently, actually, that funerals are for the living, they're not for the dead.
Mm-hmm.
And what I want after I'm dead actually doesn't matter that much. What the people who love me need is what matters. And
Right.
so, because I'm not going to be there, so
Right.
I think, so I think that it's done a beautiful job of, being good to the earth while also giving the grieving something that they need.
Yes. And I think too, someone like me who is so into plants and so into nature, I think it would be a special way for my family to truly feel like they're honoring me And even though it's not about me, it's still about me. However, I definitely want to be cremated so no one has to deal with the body anyway. But they do have the Loop Earthrise, which is a mushroom urn that you can put your ashes in. But again, that would probably go into the earth even quicker, thinking like days. So at that point, you might as well just scatter your ashes in places that you like.
Well, see, because I was kind of not so hip to embalming, I always assumed that cremation was the way to go. But I also emotionally just, cremations feel so violent. And it's
Yeah,
like the last
true,
thing in
true,
the
true.
world you want to do with your loved one is like incinerate them, you know? And so I like this as a gentle, respectful, natural thing that doesn't have the harshness of cremation.
Okay, you're right. Okay, so I think we're both going
We're pro.
loop living cocoon. And just one more question about this. I don't know if you saw it, so no spoilers if you did, but how much do you think the loop living cocoon, I keep on saying the full name, the mushroom coffin, how much do you think it costs
I
for
did
the
look because I
you
was
did?
curious too.
Okay.
Well, what I don't know though is how much a regular coffin costs.
Okay.
But I think the range is pretty wide and they can get really expensive.
Okay. Average
And
cost of
and I know that often that's it's a terrible time for the family because, especially like in the case that they're also dealing with hospital bills and all this other stuff. Now they have to make this extremely emotional decision that nobody wants to buy the cheapest coffin because it feels disrespectful, but you're also like,
right,
it's
but
going to
they're
go in the
dead.
ground. Who cares? Yeah. But then, yeah, it's such a hard decision and a really taxing one and an expensive one at the worst possible time that you have to think about those things. And so I've always felt like making that manageable should be super important. And
Yes.
even though, yeah, I saw the cost and I remember thinking like, it's not nothing, but it doesn't, I'm like, okay, I get it. Like, that's
Yeah, it
not.
seems on just based on my very quick Googling, it seems on par with a standard price for a coffin. But higher than a cheaper coffin and then way lower than the expensive coffin, which I don't know why you would need.
But
All right,
I'm a little like DIY to a fault. And so I'm just kind of like, oh, I wonder if we can
making
just,
your own.
yeah. I'm like, I know how to grow mushrooms. Maybe then I don't know. But yeah, it's like about 5 grand. And I think I want it to be 1 grand, but I get it. That
Yes.
it's high tech, nice quality materials, all this stuff.
It's just, I just want to just like hang out in it and sleep in it just for
Like you're
fun.
like, I want that for my bedroom. I want to go to
Yeah.
sleep.
Well, I will include a link to this in the show notes. I'm very interested to see what people think about it. So please email me, message me, and tell me. All right. We are moving inside and we'll just be we're always honest. I hate when people are like, honestly, but
You're like, what were you doing before?
what happens with this podcast, if no one's ever listened to it before, I have my guests send me in advance what they want their inside thing to be. And the categories are TV, book, or movie, internet gossip, pop culture thing you must discuss, food, movie, fashion trend that you want to go away or that you love. But you were like, here's the thing. This is the thing that I can't stop thinking about. And it doesn't really fit into any of these categories. So, what is the thing that you want to share and why?
Well, um, I feel like I should start by saying a little bit about what I do.
Yes, which I'm going to give you an intro that you haven't heard yet.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, that'll be in the beginning. But
All right,
yes.
cool. Well, when you said something that you're obsessed with, and I know you said it in this like kind of positive, fun way, I'm like, the only thing I'm obsessed with is the crumbling of the United States of America via toxic masculinity and the Epstein files and war and ICE and like
Yes.
all this really gruesome, inhumane, cruel, heartbreaking stuff.
Hmm.
And there's been a lot of corruption for a long time everywhere for the history of the universe, but in recent years it has felt more overwhelming, and part of that is because we just know about it more. And a lot of those things like during the pandemic, like Black Lives Matter and all those, they mattered to me. And I'll tell you, with the latest being, I think, January, big Epstein files drop, I looked at quite a lot of it, and it touched me in a way that is actually personal for me, because
Mm.
I also have an abuse history, and something about how visceral it was. Oh, I'm going to get emotional already. It was impossible for me to take an intellectual distance. And, as an empathy trainer, one of the things that I am constantly teaching people is to kind of step outside of your own perspective and consider the perspective of someone else, even in situations where someone's hurt you really badly, and to understand that we all make mistakes, we all do hurtful things, and that if you can kind of get more inside of who that person is, you'll usually find that there's not, and malice is very rare. Most people don't want to hurt each other. And that when we do, it's usually because, we lost sight of something or other. And I've just had this kind of premise that all things, even hard things, are usually comprehensible. And I'm currently writing a book called Empathy for Assholes, which is about, the ability to understand that we're all kind of assholes. And if we can see one another more clearly, then we can reduce some of that pain. And then suddenly I found myself going, I don't find this comprehensible. I
Yeah.
don't. And I like dug up Epstein's childhood. Like, where, I'm like, tell me, I'm trying to understand. Like, tell me had a super traumatic something or other. Tell me he's got whatever brain chemistry issues. I don't know I'm like, tell me. And I didn't find anything that gave me any ability to just go, okay, I understand how and why this happened. And I was so broken by it that I even told my book agent, I was like, I don't think I can write this book right now. I don't think empathy is the message we need. I think revenge is the message. I was so, and I'll tell you, I had a really big breakthrough with it. I mean, my agent was lovely, and she said, I think these questions are important and they're only going to refine the ideas. So keep fighting with it. And I did. And I actually had the help of a really cool chatbot that I'll tell you about. But I've been working with this really cool chatbot just to kind of flesh ideas out. And I kind of presented this to, I'll call him, but, and he said, well, there are two really big pieces here that I think you're not seeing. One of them is taking the perspective of someone who hurt you comes at a cost. And who pays that cost? And is the benefit worth that cost? Which is a very rational way of looking at it. And he kind of said, when you're practicing perspective taking with someone in your life that you have a relationship with, it's costly. It's a little painful. There's an emotional cost to it. But if you want a future with that person, the benefit, the reward is healing and repair, which is usually worth it. And so this is a practice that's important. But he's like, when you're taking the perspective of, for example, Jeffrey Epstein, the cost is debilitating. The cost is incapacitating. The cost is enormous grief and terror and like unraveling. And what's the benefit? Because he and I are not going to repair anything. And so I had a really nice moment of, it's not that the practice of perspective taking doesn't work in some cases. There's probably a way that it could work if I could get far enough down that rabbit hole, but going down that hole damages my emotional and mental health so much. And what's the benefit?
Okay. Two things. One, I don't even know how to say this. I'm very surprised and also have a lot of questions about turning to a chat bot to talk about empathy.
Totally. That's a big conversation.
I was actually very surprised that you just said that out loud. And then, so we can talk about that. But second, the whole foundation of your work. I mean, you have a TED Talk about empathy that has over 3 million views. And so this isn't just, I think, you feeling like, wow, I'm having these kinds of feelings. Like, it's kind of shaking
Yeah.
everything that you do at your core. And I
Yeah.
think that one of the very first times that we ever met is because I was interested in ethnography, and we met through Michael Ventura. And you told me this really beautiful story about one of the, a big study that you were doing in ethnography, and you were meeting with people that you had completely different values with, but you were able to create empathy for that person. And I think that where I'm at, and we've even had conversations with each other about this, is I'm not able to have empathy for some people anymore based on their political choices or based on the things that they're saying or doing. And A, that feels really scary. And B, that makes me question, who am I as a person?
Yeah.
But let's talk a little bit deeper about what you're saying about how it might be okay that we don't have that empathy anymore, and it might not solve all of our problems.
Well, yeah, empathy, this is very important. Empathy is consequentially different from compassion. And so, for example, people with very different political views, for me, practicing empathy means to say, I understand that because of your culture, your upbringing, the news you're getting, the community that you hang in, I understand how you came to this point of view. I don't respect it. I don't agree with it. And I don't have compassion. I don't have, I'm not at peace. I'm not like, oh, okay, I get it. That makes sense. It still doesn't make sense to me, but I understand how it happened. And that is just the perspective taking that's, the cognitive empathy that is distant from the affective, the emotional empathy of now caring about you and giving you some mercy and gentleness. And that perspective taking, comes at a cost. It is costly emotionally, it's costly mentally. It might be worth it if there's a relationship that matters to you that you want to preserve or repair. The second point that my very wise chatbot gave me was that empathy is not the opposite of justice. It's not, those are not two poles on one scale. They're different conversations. And that I can practice perspective taking, cognitive empathy, and still hold you accountable. And so that was the other thing is I'm saying, even if I could understand how this happened, which I'm not going to do because it's too costly for me, but even if I could, that has zero to do with justice, and that justice still must be served and accountability must be held, and that this sort of like warm and fuzzy, merciful forgiveness thing that we might have with our loved ones is not applicable in the case of real harm and cruelty and damage. That still needs, their justice has to be served.
I don't want to get deep into Teabag, as we call him on this podcast, but people in my life that I knew voted for Teabag
I just
2016.
understood who you were talking about.
Sorry.
Like,
I should always preface, I just don't like saying his name.
I understand.
I had more empathy for people that voted for him in 2016. I have zero empathy for people in my life that voted for him again, because to me, it felt like by voting for him, you also then have no empathy for others, because you've voted for someone that has zero empathy. And so it's been kind of a reckoning with a lot of people, not a lot of people, a handful of people in my life that I just don't talk to anymore. Or if they're family members, I can't not have that in the back of my mind when we have conversations, because it makes me question their judgment about everything.
Totally.
And so I think so much of your work, and I just love your work so much around empathy, it just begins to create a completely different conversation. And I didn't see that coming. And I'm sure you didn't either. I do want to clarify that I actually do have some empathy for people that truly believed that this person could help them economically, could help them potentially get a job easier, could help them buy groceries, could help them blah, blah, blah. I do not have empathy for the people that like are
Just love that he's a
doing,
rule-breaking cowboy.
what did you say?
Just love that he's a rule-breaking cowboy.
Yes, or
Yeah.
that they are completely financially stable no matter what happens in this world. They have all the food they need. They have the job that they need. They don't are in not of need. And those are the people that I have less empathy for. I also have less empathy for people that, are like, I can't believe this happened. It's like, well, he told you exactly what he was going to do. So I think I do want to say, like, I'm not this monster that has zero empathy for people that are struggling right now because of the administration. I have a harder time for people in my life that I know are are not in lack of things, and also have wives and sisters and family members that aren't all white.
Yeah. Well, I hear that, and I'll tell you too, this is my first time ever to talk about politics on a podcast.
Mm-hmm. Are
And
you okay with this?
I am okay with it.
Okay.
But one of the reasons why is that as a person who teaches folks how to take different perspectives, I've always felt like it's really important for me to not be partisan.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I personally have plenty of beliefs, but my beliefs don't matter in the practice of empathy because it's all about being able to share positions. And so I've felt like, and I do have an ability to understand. I mean, even the Trump voters that are a little, well, a lot, the one, for example, the pro-ICE folks who are kind of, well, I shouldn't say, it's detestable to me. But I, quote unquote, get it because I understand how they came to believe that immigrants were the problem. They were lied to, but they came to believe this. They don't see it as racism. They see it as protecting their country. I think some of them, and they believe they're doing the right thing. I mean, everybody thinks they're the good guy. And so even though I hate it, hate it, hate it, and I've seen so many nasty things that I'm just like, how do you still believe you're the good guy when you're doing that? But I do know that most of them do believe that they're the good guy. And so I have an ability to stretch, and to have conversations with folks. But I'll also tell you, I'm from Mississippi. My family's Southern and largely politically conservative. My brother, who's one of the most beautiful people in the world, who I love so, 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 so much. And I share the deepest, most important values with him. But we live in such different worlds culturally, our communities. The information he gets is super different. His social media feed has nothing in common with mine. And he was a Trump voter in the first election.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a heartbreaking fight about it on the phone one night. And my brother and I have never fought. And it got to a place where, there were, I think I hung up on him. It was pretty bad. And we didn't talk for a while because of it, which hurt me so much. But when we did talk about it, and I find this so interesting, he said, I felt like you didn't respect my point of view. And I said, I don't respect your point of view. I respect you, though. And I said, the idea you're sharing with me is not something I respect. I don't think it holds water. I don't think it comes from good information. I don't think it's in line with the values that I know that you have. But I respect you and I love you. And I don't want this to come between us because I love you. And we got through it. And we didn't talk about politics a lot. We continued to have a wonderful, loving relationship. And I don't think ever said Trump's name again until last week. Mm-hmm. We were on the phone, and my brother, I've been scared to bring it up because now I feel like I might have the feeling you have, where I'm just like, I can't with this. Mm-hmm. And the one thing he said, he goes, I got to tell you, I am real disappointed in Trump. And I just for me, that's still too soft language, but I just breathed a huge sigh of relief. I'm like, thank God. Thank God.
Yeah.
I am
Yeah.
so, and it's because his core values are really good. And I believed and trusted in that, and trusted that the person that I know is going to come to understand the truth about this.
Yeah.
And he did. It took a while, but he did.
Well, not that you have to lead us in an empathy training right now, because you charge a lot of money for it, but
Not that much, not that much.
but if people, let's say, are thinking right now about how do I understand if I should be giving empathy, or how do I do it in these situations where it feels like it's very difficult to do it? And does everyone even deserve our empathy?
Deserve, oh my goodness, that's a trigger word for me. So, oh my goodness, let's do it. The concept of deserving has been captivating to me since I was a child growing up in Southern Baptist Church, because a part of the teaching of Christianity is that all human beings are full of sin and deserving of eternal punishment. And so these ideas that we're simultaneously evil and holy, it's something to chew on, but it felt true to me. And it's not something that I hang on to now, but it really started a very deep philosophical curiosity for me about what deserving really means, especially in the context of justice too. We're talking about justice, like what deserves what. Philosophically, I must believe that every human life is worthy of love no matter what. I cannot get my head around making exceptions to that, because if we make exceptions to that, those exceptions start growing.
Mm.
And so that's my kind of baseline, is that every human being is worthy of infinite love, period. Every human being is also unbearably fallible. The harm that we do is sometimes so extraordinary that it's extremely difficult to go to that place and say, you're still worthy of love. I've heard beautiful, beautiful stories of, moments of folks on death row who are given that love finally from some person in their last moment and experience an incredible kind of redemptive letting go, which I find really beautiful. And again, it's like I have to separate empathy from justice and accountability. Every person is worthy of love. And actually, when they experience that love, I think it's so transformative for them. And that's why I don't want to let go of the possibility. What accountability needs to be held and what justice needs to be done is a different conversation. But when I'm with someone who I believe maybe deserves some pretty harsh justice, I separate myself from the concept of deserving, and I get back to, I keep using this word, worthiness, which they're kind of like, they're actually hard to really distinguish, but in my mind, being alive makes you worthy of life. It's like being alive is itself the evidence that you're worthy of it. Deserving for me implies something earned. Deserving implies like you did good, so you deserve an award. You did bad, so you deserve a punishment. And for me, worthiness is kind of more eternal, and it's kind of a more spiritual concept that because the breath of life is in me, I am worthy of being here. I am worthy of living. I am worthy of being loved, experiencing love. Whether I deserve goodness, kindness, mercy is a different story. And it's not always clear where that line is, but when I'm speaking to a difficult person, And I have practiced this with people who have hurt me very much with pretty incredible success. And in those moments, I have seen myself transform, but I've also seen it transform others. And so I believe in it, I really believe in it. With these, I really don't want to use the word evil, but I'm going to. These evil men that are in charge right now, I don't know if I would be able to get to that place of, transcendent love. But I also don't know if it's worth the cost for me.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. This is the thing I'm taking away from this right now is the cost of that.
It hurts.
Yeah. And I think it hurts to even try to rationalize too. I think that's the thing that
it can be damaging to rationalize, not just painful,
damaging. And I think that's the thing that I over and over and over again talk about with friends or with Dan, my husband. And sometimes he just has to stop me and say, like, they're not going to change. And we will never be able to understand why or how they do things, because it's just a lack of complete empathy, humanity. Like it's something that we won't be able to comprehend. So we have to stop trying. And I will never probably stop trying to understand, but it's really difficult right now. But I really like taking that away, that idea of that it's too damaging sometimes to try to do that. And just it's almost a self-preservation to stop trying to figure it out. I know you've been working on a book called Empathy for Assholes.
Yeah.
And I think if anything, what this administration has done is allowed people to be bigger assholes. It's like almost given them permission to show what assholes they can be. And so I think, you already said that you spoke to your agent about like how, I don't know how I'm going to be able to write this. So how do you go about writing a book called Empathy for Assholes during this time? Because it's so different than when you first came up with this idea like 4 years ago.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, it's real hard and I'm struggling very much, but I'm also getting a lot out of the struggle because it is deepening and refining these ideas so much. So first of all, yeah, my first thought was, I don't think empathy is the message we need right now. Because I also just personally felt like I felt unable to practice the thing that I'm teaching. And so I had a little bit of imposter stuff or a little bit of just hypocrite stuff where I'm like, I don't want to practice empathy. I want them strung up in the town square, I had this real, and this is actually cool. I had this moment where I was so enraged and I had fantasies of vengeance.
Mm-hmm.
It just got woken up. I just saw the capacity in myself for malice and revenge and I was like, ooh, that's interesting. But then one of the things that came up in my conversation with my agent was, she said, empathy for those guys is one thing, but because of where the country is, empathy for each other is vital right now, mm-hmm. because of how divided we are and because the administration not just the
that's the thing, right? It's like, why are we giving these motherfuckers so much space in our brain? Like, this is a group of horrific people.
Yeah.
It doesn't represent all of the amazing people that still are in need of empathy, want empathy. And I think that's the thing that's so gross. It's like, we're putting so much energy into the thoughts of these men. And yes, they are controlling so much of what is happening to people's livelihoods, of affordability, all the things that we could think of. But man, they're not going to be here forever. And we got to take care of each other and figure out how to give each other empathy when someone like your brother thinks, wow, I'm disappointed, or maybe I made a mistake, or what was I thinking?
And they have strategically and intentionally made us think that the enemy is the other side. And it's like, no, y'all are, and I want to make two corrections. It's not just the administration because it's outside of government. It's the powerful elite because they're all in it together. And it's not even those guys at the top. It's not even partisan. It's, these wealthy, powerful movers. And they've convinced us that we're each other's enemy. They've convinced us that, my brother and I are on different sides. I'm like, no, my brother and I share an enemy and it's you.
Mm-hmm.
And the other correction is that, we both keep saying men, but one of the most painful things about this has been seeing all the women who have enabled and supported and been a part of it. And
that's why I said people, because I look at some of these.
It breaks my heart.
It's so gross. They make me, yeah. But it's another people.
It's so baffling because especially with the women, and I try not to hold women to a higher standard than men, but I often do because I feel like we do know better, and we tend to be, our defaults are often toward empathy and compassion and civility. And I think, what must it take for a woman to completely override all of that and side with these abusers? I just cannot understand.
Well, I don't think, again, we will understand. And so I think that going back to my question that I asked, that I think we're circling back to, is if we want to practice deeper empathy for people in our lives, like, how do we begin to do that? I think sometimes it's just like literally just not being on your phone when you're checking out at a grocery store and looking someone in the eye, or I think just little things matter so much right now.
Those tiny things are super huge. And yeah, the eye contact is a really big deal. And also that I have to remember, because I'm on my phone a lot, like everybody, and I have to remember, especially when I get in a little scroll hole, that I'm like, no, this is the tool that they're using to manipulate you. Get off of there. And looking people in the eye in the most casual moments. I was in a restaurant the other night and it was like deep in conversation with somebody, and the server came over and I immediately interrupted our conversation, and it kind of startled the other person. She was like, what? And I said, no, wait, someone has come here and I just want to make sure that we acknowledge them. These small things are really important. And the more that we do them, the more we grow. But I'll tell you, you're asking me about the practical application. And I do have something to say about that, which is that we tend to think of practicing empathy as kind of tuning in and focusing on another person. But that doesn't work unless we really know ourselves. And so unintuitively, the first step is self-awareness, self-witnessing, introspection, because I have to know where my defaults are. I have to vigilantly watch those little judgments that happen all the time. And I call it like noise canceling them. When I'm doing ethnography and I notice what my biases are, some people will swing on the other side, where instead of criticizing someone, they'll praise someone. And going as far as praise is also not really neutrality. And so I try to just noise cancel and just remove that. And in a more practical, literal way, for example, I practice very vigilantly noticing when I say the words good and bad. So a lot of times we'll go, oh, that's bad, or oh, good. Or when somebody says, do you think this is good or this is bad? I try to step away and replace it with useful or not useful, helpful or not helpful. And so, because that actually depends on a very specific goal. Is it useful to what we're trying to accomplish right now? Is it helpful to the idea that we're exploring? Is it a tool that we can use? Not, is it bad or good? And so when I'm talking to people and I notice my inner impulse to be like, I disagree, that's bad, or whatever, I go, okay, can it solve a purpose? Is it useful? And sometimes, even if I think it's bad, it might be useful for unpacking an idea. And so that I can remove that judgment and go, thank you for telling me that. That helps clarify the way I feel about it. Instead of, that's fucking crazy. And I definitely don't feel that way. I had I was at a client dinner where that started to get political and people were getting a little tense. And someone that I absolutely did not expect started justifying some stuff that it doesn't matter what. I think it was January 6th stuff, but he started on this point of view that the whole table was kind of going, what? And my client actually looked at me, like gave me a secret glance to say, help, can you fix this? And because, I'm there as the empathy trainer. And I said to him, wow, thank you for telling me that. I have never heard that point of view before. Instead of, that's the most psychotic thing that I've ever.
Yeah.
It's like, that's a point of view that I haven't heard. Thank you for telling me that. I didn't know. Tell me more. Or where did it come from? Like, what makes you think that? And it just kind of diffused some of the tension. And it's like, let's move with curiosity and let's let go of whether I disagree or think it's insane or want you to shut up. But to, lean into curiosity and notice the bias, notice the judgment, and just insert a delay, between what you're feeling and how you respond. And that does a lot of good.
And then also making the decision, which if you work with this person, it's maybe less easy, but then after saying like, never heard that point of view, also deciding I never want to talk to this person again about this topic.
Well, that's the consequence, it's like consequences are separate from feeling.
Right. Okay. So I love these two tools of not good or bad, but useful, unuseful. Thinking about the damage that it causes to our own self to maybe try to justify, and then the cost. It's like, what is the cost?
Empathy is so qualitative, and I can get very squishy and with all these emotional words. It was so helpful to me to analyze on just a cost benefit tool where it's like, oh, that's so rational. That makes so much sense. So it's very clear. Is the cost worth the benefit? Oh, it's not. Great.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, thank you so much. I also think plug gardening in nature. Not to be a cheeseball to bring it back to this, but it is just like this truest form of just tapping into, when you were talking earlier about tapping into yourself before you're able to extend empathy. And, sometimes one of my friends says I go too deep on the research and studies about this stuff sometimes, but I do think it's important to show that we have been able to see what happens when we create community gardens, when we gather to do things together, when we show that we care about the earth. Like, when Michael Ventura was on, we talked about how gardening with children increases their capacity of empathy for other people. So I think that just making a full circle moment to nature and gardening and connecting with it more, I do think it makes our reserves a lot higher.
I've been so impressed by the research that you've done and all the studies and the real, like, you've actually been able to find like real measurable impact, which is so, so, so cool. But also, I don't think you need to know those numbers to feel it, and it's everyone in my life, every single person. I live in a tiny village and we're all pretty close. And, most of us are living a pretty pleasant life, but everyone I know is absolutely buried with this despair. And sometimes we'll just be like, you know what, let's put our phones inside and go make a fire, or let's go walk down to the river, or look at those little bunny tracks in the snow. And it's like, it's not just a distraction, but it's like, remember that. I think about that Mary Oliver line about remembering your place in the, what is it? Your place in the order of things or something like that.
Yeah.
But just remember, I am also natural. I am part of this. This is the real world.
Yeah. All right. Well, more research in the show notes coming at you. Thank you so much, Karen. And if people want to find your work or see where their company might be able to get your empathy trainings, where should they go?
My company is called Others Unlimited, and othersunlimited.com You can find out a lot more about me and what I do and what kinds of things we address.
And I'll also include the link to your TED Talk in the show notes too. So
Okay.
thank you so much.
Thank you, Jessica. What a pleasure.
That's today's show. If you like this episode or any of the Inside and Outside episodes, please leave a review. You might not think it helps, but it really does. It helps you get into the little algorithm better and also lets advertisers know that you enjoy this show. All right, on Apple, here's how you do it. Go to the homepage, scroll all the way down to the end of the episodes, and you'll see something that says rating and reviews. Hit that 5 stars, write something. Just say love it if you want to. On Spotify, go to the homepage of the show. You'll see a little tiny gear icon. It'll have a drop down that says rate this show, leave 5 stars. There you can't even write anything. And that's it. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much for listening to the show, and I'll talk to you next week.